Hi, I'm Assemblyman Steve Otis, and I'm here with two candidates for the Village of Mamaroneck local election. Candidate Tom Murphy, who's running for mayor, and Nora Lucas, who is running for village trustee. And Tom and Nora, great to see you. And you are not new faces to local issues in the Village of Mamaroneck. Both of you have been involved for a long time, and it's an exciting race. Tom, you were on the Village Board of Trustees. You're now on the town board, Town of Mamaroneck board, a lot of experience with the municipalities around here. How is that informing how you're entering this race and how you think you would do as mayor?
Well, Steve, first of all, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time to help us out here. You know, as you pointed out, I have a lot of experience in the Village of Mamaroneck. I was able to, I think, affect changes both in zoning and how the village government worked more efficiently when I was here. Going to the town of Mamaroneck is a really good exemplar of running meetings in a collegial way, working together cooperatively, even when you don't necessarily agree on everything. You know, we try and work things out and behave in a professional manner. I'd like to take some of those skill sets and bring them over to the town of Mamaroneck. I'm sorry, to the Village of Mamaroneck from the town of Mamaroneck. You know, I think in the Village of Mamaroneck, we have the potential to be, you know, one of the best run, if not the best run villages in Westchester. We have great employees, we have amazing volunteers, and we really just need the leadership to move it forward. You know, and a lot of that leadership sometimes is about, you know, not having contentious meetings. You know, some people say, oh, it's not the friendly village anymore, but that's not true. It is the friendly village. The 5 people on the board are not the exemplars of the village. The exemplars of the village are the volunteer firemen, the policemen, our workers, the people who volunteer on the CAP Center, and all the community that makes this a great place to live. So I don't want people to, when people say that, I don't want them to think that the village isn't a friendly place anymore. It's a great place to live, a great place to have children, and we just want the government to be reflective of the good of the people.
So you're going to preach collegiality.
I'm going to preach collegiality, and I think it's an easy thing to do. You know, you just, it's what they taught you in kindergarten. You be kind and respectful to everybody. Well,
it's a small village, and everybody knows everybody. So that makes it all more important to try and everyone get along.
Truth.
So well, that sounds great.
Yep.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Nora, now you have been around for a long time in terms of the civic life of the community. Tell viewers, you've been involved in so many issues, tell viewers the types of things experiences you've had, but I'll start with a trivia question. If you could ballpark, how many village board meetings do you think you've been to over many, many years? Because you probably have been to more than most people alive in the Village of Mamaroneck.
Yeah, it's too many to count.
Been to more than me.
I would say too many to count, and I will say that as I've been knocking door to door or going to the train station, I have seen, you know, I've met lots of people who I don't know, but who know me from TV, and they all seem to be positive, so that's a plus. And I owe Tom a debt of gratitude because I can go to less meetings because they're taped. So if I can't get to a meeting, I can watch it, and I do. I try to follow all the board meetings, and most of the planning meetings, and most of the zoning board meetings. So I guess I'm a Village of Mamaroneck meeting junkie. I don't watch the town meetings too often, but I've lived in the village since 1986, and before I moved here, I was appointed to the Landmarks Committee because I'm an architectural historian. So I deal with codes all the time in terms of local, state, and national register nominations, and local historic districts and planning for historic preservation. So I'm pretty familiar with the code. And I first began to be active as like an activist in the village when I realized that the code isn't always enforced fairly, and some people get a pass that other people don't get. So my sort of sense of fairness was triggered, and I worked with some neighbors to advocate for a problem in my neighborhood, and I've worked with other residents to advocate for the rights of residents, because I really feel that if we don't maintain the land use laws, or all of our codes, but especially land use codes, the rules that all of us are supposed to play by, then nobody benefits. I mean, if some people get preferential treatment, it's not fair to anybody. And I think it results, when the village doesn't enforce the code fairly, it results in lots of litigation, which is expensive for the village. It pits neighbor against neighbor, and usually the beneficiaries are outside developers. And so, you know, one of my goals for running and being a trustee is to make sure that the village codes are enforced fairly and evenly for all residents and all parties who want to do business or move into the village.
When both of you go around, is that an issue that resonates with voters as you're going around and campaigning? You hear that
I
brought
do,
up?
yeah,
Yes.
I would say yes, yeah.
I think, the people, see a lot of development going on, and they wonder, where does it end? What does the future look like for the village of Mamaroneck? That's why one of the things, we want to really work on is the master plan and not doing spot zoning, to make sure that the zoning benefits the residents. Zoning, as you know, Steve, well, is to protect the residents of the village and to protect the property owners. And if every time a developer wants to come in, we're changing our law to benefit that developer without thinking about how that affects the community around it, we're not really serving our residents. And it's nice to have development, and we all need business, but if it's no longer tenable to live in that community because of something that's going on around it, or because of the development in totality, that the traffic is so much and the schools are overburdened, then it becomes a problem for all of us. So, and I think we need a board of trustees that looks at the whole picture and not just looks at individual developments.
Sure. Now, you mentioned traffic, and certainly traffic is one of the big phenomenons of Mamaroneck. With so much activity, traffic has increased. What are your thoughts of each of you on how to get a better handle on traffic flow and safety issues as it relates to people getting around?
Want to start with that one? Or?
Yeah, sure. So traffic is probably the #1 issue that we have seen as we walk the village. People are concerned, and they're concerned on many levels. They're concerned because people drive too quickly. They're concerned because it takes too long to get places, that there's a rush hour, a school rush hour, because we have so many schools that are dismissing and commencing at the same amount of time. And so people would really like more enforcement, and it's a tricky question because there's X amount of police officers and code enforcement officers, and all the schools are opening at the same times. So I think there needs to be ways of thinking about whether we can use those, signs the electronic signs that flash the speed, or maybe some kind of speed humps, but to try and sort of have, it's not an easy fix, but it's a solution. It's a problem that affects everybody in the community. And I think that will really be one of our priorities, because we got an email from somebody whose child was hit on the post road this week.
Thankfully, they're okay.
They're okay, but they had previously complained to us about traffic in front of their house and the speed with which drivers go, and it wasn't even near their house. So it's scary for parents.
I grew up in Manhattan in the 60s and the 70s, and some of my worst memories are seeing friends and other kids get hit by cars. And and what we have going on now is, because of, everybody has a car now, everybody's in a hurry, people have been waiting for so long that when they get an open lane, they take off. And, just everybody has so many commitments now because both parents are working. So we have to teach our residents to drive slower. And, I remember that Rye did something in Post Road where it comes into Rye, where you did a traffic calming. Feature.
It was something when I was mayor.
I remember that.
And we improved safety by moving it from two
to one lane.
Insufficiently wide lanes to one lane, and it's been a big success. So
I think we have to look at all of our options. Obviously, enforcement of our laws to make sure people aren't speeding. New York City now has traffic humps, which aren't the bumps. They're more graduated and they're larger, and they really work at slowing people down. And after a while, people get to know they're there, so they automatically slow down. I think we have a responsibility as a government. We've been warned that there's a big problem. We have to do something about it. People need to feel safe when they walk. We encourage people to walk. We have to make it safe to walk.
That's certainly an important issue.
And walking to schools could alleviate the traffic. So, but parents don't want their kids to walk if they feel that it's not a safe condition.
Sure.
So,
and part of the reason I moved here, and a lot of people from the city move here, is because it is a walking community. You can go to Mamaroneck Avenue. You can go down to Harbor and walk around. You don't have to drive. But, everybody has a car, but you can go for a nice leisurely walk on nice sidewalks and to the center of town, and be home in a half an hour.
It sounds like an important priority.
Without a doubt.
It is.
One of the other issues that has a long history in Mamaroneck are environmental issues. And Mamaroneck, as you know, is the first village in the state to get their waterfront plan
LWRP.
approved in the 80s. And long history of that. So what are the big environmental issues as the two of you see it going into this election?
Well, you know, I was chairman of Coastal Zone Management Commission for years here in the village, and so I'm very concerned about water quality. We always have issues with water quality in the village of Mamaroneck because of our enclosed harbor where our beach is located. So I think, you know, we have to be proactive about cleaning our sewers and repairing our sewers because, as you know, a lot of the problem is sanitary sewer overflows, and we have ancient sewers in the village of Mamaroneck, and you know it's going to be an issue that we're going to have to spend money on, and we're going to have to devote resources to. But at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to have clean water. And I want our children someday to be able to swim in Harbor Island Beach without a gun to boom, and you know, to enjoy that if you're splashing in a stream, that you're not going to get bacteria that's going to hurt you. And I think another really important thing environmentally we have to worry about is flooding. You know, we have to look very seriously at the Corps of Engineers plan, and we have to make sure that that fits into our community, and you know, we make it work as best we can for everybody. But there's a lot of areas that the Corps plan doesn't cover that we have to try and alleviate flooding there too. And part of that is just basic maintenance, keeping your storm sewers clean. And you know, it affects the village as a whole, but it really affects people's lives when they are affected by flooding. It's traumatic. And one of the hardest parts of being a trustee, when I was a trustee the last time, were the big floods in '07. Because people lost everything. And Twice. And the unfortunate thing is, you know, it's almost always the people who could least afford to lose anything who lose everything.
And Mamaroneck got hit worse than anyone else in Westchester County in those floods.
It was like a mini Katrina. I mean, thank God, because of our volunteers, we didn't lose any lives. So, you know, we were very lucky.
And we're embarking and exploring this Army Corps plan, which, you know, has been on the books, often on the books for years, but it's not the only solution. So we can't just put all our eggs into the Army Corps basket.
And it might not come to fruition.
It might not come to fruition, but even if it does come to fruition, there are other things that we need to be doing, like elevating buildings that are in the floodplain and making sure that we protect our mature trees, which can help absorb the water, and also having more impervious surfaces. I mean, really focusing on that, which I think is part of this new industrial area redevelopment. They're trying to explore, you know, doing any new projects with impervious surfaces, including the sidewalks. And I think we have to just focus on both, because we can't just rely on the Army Corps plan, and even if it comes to fruition, it won't solve all of our problems. But it's an obligation that we often think about only when there's a flood, when there's an emergency.
Just to piggyback on that, one of the things I'm proud of being a town board member is we redid the parking lot at the town center, and we put in porous pavement and we put in porous asphalt. And that is going to directly reduce the sewage that goes, the storm water that goes into Mamaroneck Harbor, because whatever drains off of that parking lot goes into a storm sewer right into the harbor. So, you know, that's a little, you know, it's a big parking lot, so hopefully that'll help a bit in the future.
Every bit helps.
And,
Every bit helps. Every bit helps, and every bit can hurt. Like every bit you inappropriately pave can hurt, and every bit you pave right can help.
I mean, that's one thing I did glean from the town of Mamaroneck too. They view everything through an environmental lens. As you know, Nancy Seligson is very proactive, and we've had a lot of projects done, and they were all done with the view of helping the environment and helping the taxpayer.
So that's good. One of the other things that is always an issue are there always development controversies in the village of Mamaroneck. You have any thoughts on how to approach issues that come up, or from your experience?
I think one of the things that we need to do, and Tom touched on this, is update our code. Our code was adopted in 1968, which is a long time ago, and it hasn't been holistically updated. So we make a change here and we make a change here, but sometimes there's an unanticipated consequence. And so I think a lot of the controversies that have arisen are due to ambiguities in the code, different interpretations of different building inspectors. And so I think where there's an issue that is coming up now about changing the code for one property, and that I think never goes well. So I think that it'll be a priority of both of us to to go through the code completely and holistically. And I'm not saying it has to be completely rewritten, but I think we need to make sure that when we use a term, we have it defined, and that the code is completely homogenized so that it's easier to interpret and that the interpretations are clear and consistent.
So I know one of the issues that you have raised during the campaign is just the whole RFP process and how things function in terms of the village. What are your thoughts on maybe better practices that you are advocating?
Well, I think we are inconsistent in the way we send out and administer RFPs, and we often don't do it for professional services, which are a big portion of our budget. So I think we do it for projects like bridges, but we don't always administer the projects well. But I think we could do a much better job in terms of professional services with making sure that we follow the state rules more carefully.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the planning issue for a moment. When I was on the Village of Mamaroneck board and when I was on the town board, we did do zoning changes. So I have experience doing zoning changes. But you know what, we did it in the way where we had a full environmental impact statement. And we looked at how that change would affect the whole area. I think we have to, zoning, as I pointed out before, has to be done holistically. If you don't look at how it's going to affect the whole community, the traffic in the community, how it's going to affect the schools, how it's going to affect your tax base, how it's going to affect your services, then you really haven't done your job. And it's important to take your time and do it right. You know, as you know, you measure twice and you cut once, so that you don't have to keep going back and doing it. One of the things I'm most proud of from my last tenure on the Board of Trustees was getting the Planning Board and Zoning Board meetings televised, because that opened up the process to the whole community. And I think what we need to do now is when the Board of Trustees wants to do a zoning change, we should tell every landowner in that area a notice, send out a notice, we're thinking about doing this, and this will be the hearing date. I think that, right now the Board of Trustees doesn't have to give notice of a zoning change. I think that's one thing I'd like to see changed, that the Board of Trustees, if they're considering a zoning change, has to tell every property owner that's zoned for that, this is what we're considering, come on down, join us, help us to reason this through. Because you don't want a situation where you do it and then you've made half the community angry at you.
So the same sort of notice that maybe is required for some other land
For a
use
homeowner.
decisions.
Right.
that
Exactly.
Certain number of feet or some equation like that.
Or if you're in the zone.
Yeah.
Well, because they have to give just a legal notice, but not, it's in the newspaper.
Yes.
I mean, it's sort of a pro forma kind of
it's that
notice.
big in the sound in town or something.
Right,
You know
and
what I
so,
mean?
and that's sort of, that's also, I mean, a transparency issue.
Yes.
That is not very transparent. There's going to be one that's voted on in 2 weeks. It was at the work session. It affects all of C1. That's a lot of our commercial streets.
Post
and
Road.
it's just got up at work session, and it's scheduled for a public hearing in less than 2 weeks. So I think that transparency is important to both Tom and to me, and I think televising the work sessions will be a big improvement because a lot goes on in the work sessions. We can thank Tom for televising the regular sessions, but I think transparency is, it's hard work, but the more transparent we are, the more public input we get, the better decisions we can make, because we don't know everything.
Right. And well, the regular sessions were always televised. I did the land use
And
televising, yeah.
But you've made sort of open government public participation one of your themes, and
Yes.
you're very familiar with it because you've been participating as a
have
member
been.
of the public for a long,
have
long
been.
time. But are you getting good reaction from residents when you go around and talk about that issue? Do people have a desire to be more involved in these things?
I think they do, and I think they also watch. So, and it's something, you don't have to be involved in commenting if you're able to watch. Most people are going to comment if they're not happy. People don't comment if everything is going okay. But if they can see and they're comfortable with what's going on at meetings, that makes them more comfortable and more trusting of the government. So,
Yeah, I agree. When you're running the meeting, when you're a mayor, it's incumbent upon you to let everybody talk, to listen, and to respond where appropriately. I think what's going on in this country, not just in Mamaroneck, is that people have lost some trust in all of government. whether it's your local government, your state government, your federal government. They don't trust anybody that will run the up and up. So I think the more transparent you could be, the more people you could drag into this, especially on a local level, because I think on a local level is where we begin showing people that government can work again, that it can serve your interests. Because I'm a big believer that government can positively affect people's lives. But we have to have those people involved. And democracy is a participation sport, and Nora has been an exemplar of participation.
It's my favorite sport.
But as an elected official, I have sat in meetings and thought I had my mind made up about something, and people would get up and give arguments that swayed me, because that's part of the process. You have to listen, because I don't know everything. You don't know everything. You're a very smart man, been involved in government your whole life, but I'm sure you learn things new every day. And if you're not open to that process, then you're not doing that job, and then people aren't going to trust the process. Even if you hear something that you disagree with, they're allowed to say that. That's okay. You don't have to argue with them. You don't have to agree with everybody. But just.
You make a great point, because one of the things that I learned being in local government for many years was that you're really supposed to go to the meetings with an open mind, even if you came in with a perspective, because someone could come in who knows something. Mamaroneck has a lot of smart people that live in Mamaroneck, and people come in who have real expertise. They say something that says that a light bulb goes off. Maybe we have to do it a little differently. And so it's important, I think, anywhere in local government to do it well is to be a good listener and being open to changing course when you hear something smart that something that Nora, you probably wish everyone over the years thought that way when they were on the board and they didn't listen to what you said. So.
I do wish that, and I promise to be a good listener.
Yeah, I remember being a trustee and getting emails from Nora when I woke up at 5:30 in the morning. I'd be like, oh my God, doesn't she sleep? But then you read it and you're like, yeah, okay, well, she's making some good points here. So, and I would react to it, because, if you don't react to it, if you don't read it, you don't learn. And even if somebody says something that you disagree with, you at least get a view of how other people are thinking about things, which is important. Like, even if you don't take their point of view, you see why they're thinking that way.
Sure. Well, we only have a few minutes left. I think it would be nice to finish the show with just some thoughts that you have after weeks of campaigning and going around in this role where you're talking to people what's going on in the village, and just some closing comments from each of you about how you're sizing up the village now and in the future.
Well, thanks. I do think that people are interested in the local election, which I'm very gratified to hear. We've knocked on doors in many different neighborhoods, and we've knocked on doors of people we know and people we don't know. People are enthusiastic about local government. I think they think the election's important. This election may be more significant than other elections, because I think people are feeling very motivated to get out there and vote and do their civic duty. And I feel that even with people who probably are not necessarily going to agree with us or vote for us, they're very happy to talk to us. So I feel that there's good conversations. So it's been a great experience so far, and I'm looking forward to the next busy 3 weeks.
Well, Steve, I just, I'm going to ask for people to vote for me, and the reason I'm going to ask for them to vote for me is because I have the experience in having done this before. I have, I understand government from a theoretical level, but I also understand how to get things done practically. The village of Mamaroneck is all about relationships, and how you treat people, and knowing what people's concerns are and what their history is. And I have a lot of that knowledge, and I've been able to put that to use before. And I'm hoping to do it again, and I'm hoping to take the knowledge that I gleaned from the town of Mamaroneck and bring some of the the good government ethic that they had over there into the village of Mamaroneck. And I want to unleash and untap the potential of our employees and our volunteers to make this the best run community in Westchester County. And I think we can do that. All we need is the right leadership, and I think Nora and I will provide that leadership. And hopefully on November 7th, the voters will agree with us. But no matter what the outcome, we will all still be working hard to help this community come November 8th. But I hope the voters can vote for Nora and I on November 7th.
And
Yeah.
I'll still be going to meetings, either way.
Nora's going either way.
Yeah.
She just you
Different
can you
seat.
can leave if when you're not on the village board. This has been a great talk, and
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for doing
voting
this.
is important. I'm going to give you both one last opportunity to make a pitch that it's important to vote in local elections. You want to add something about how important it is for people to be involved locally?
Because this is where you pay your majority of taxes, and these are the services that affect your life directly. And you can have the most influence in a local election.
And a very small percentage of our voters vote in local elections. So let's make it 100% this year.
Exactly.
That's great. A great way to end. And Mamaroneck, here are two really wonderful people who've been involved for a long time. It's been great to talk to both of you,
Thank
and
you.
good luck on
Same here.
election
Thank you
day.
very much.
Everyone should vote.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much, Steve.